Good afternoon. Thank you so much, Laura. I really appreciate that introduction. Before I start, as I was sitting here waiting for you all to come in, I can't tell you how overwhelming and touched it is to see so many former students here. As a teacher, when you were on middle school, it means a lot to see you come, so thank you for taking your time and coming here today. One day back in September, in Wydown, when I was working there, I was on the outdoor walkway. If you haven't been there, we've got this really neat covered walkway between the two buildings now as we continue the construction. And as I was walking to check my mail in the new building, Laura James was there, a former student of mine. And she asked me, and she told me that I was selected to be one of the speakers for this wonderful speaker series. And I was very honored, humbled, and excited to be asked to do such a wonderful thing and be involved with this. So I gladly accepted the offer, and then I began the journey on what exactly should I speak about. And as I was thinking about it, and as I saw when you were all coming in here, the audience primarily is composed of former students of mine when you were at Wydown. And I have the honor of teaching this course at Wydown called Integrated Arts. And a lot of you may remember it. It's a course that almost all sixth graders take. And it involves theater, music, art, technology, and so much more into a year-long study and experience. And the journey that we call Integrated Arts gives students a company experience along the way through the power of connections. And that moment is when I realized exactly what I wanted to talk about today, is connections. And when you hear the word connections, a lot of times you think business and networking, but what I'm talking about are the personal connections that you make that will impact your life in that exact moment or when you're further down the road. So, you see, we're all connected to each other in one way or another. And it's through connections with one another that helps us define who we are and promote our growth as learners, citizens, and most importantly, a community. We impact each other through everything we do, say, and become. Connections aren't always understood or realized at the moment they happen. Instead, somewhere down the road, we will remember the connection made, and in turn, we'll be able to understand what it meant and how it impacted us. So take, for example, Integrated Arts. As I said, almost all sixth graders take that class. And I know some of you may have joined Clayton after sixth grade, or you were not able to participate in that program, but that doesn't matter. You'll still be able to make a connection with us today. I want to take a moment just so we can reconnect with something that we do in Integrated Arts. And we do that with the students as a way to focus and connect. So I don't know if any of you will remember this, but anyone remember the mirror? Okay, so here's how we're going to reconnect. So this is why I'm talking about connections, because when you come back to a connection, you'll remember it many years later. So I'm going to try to do this with this handheld microphone, so everyone sit nice and tall in your chair. Put your backs against the seats. Okay, so I'm your mirror. You're looking at the mirror in the morning when you're getting ready to come to school, and I'm your reflection. So if I raise this hand, which hand will you raise? Okay, so it should be your right hand. Now raise your hand if this is ringing a bell. Anyone? Okay, now a few. All right, so I'm going to put the microphone down. I just want you to follow me. We'll do some mirror exercises here. Okay, so we just did something together as a group, all at the same time. And those of you who remember doing that Integrated Arts will probably now begin the process of recollecting your experience in that class, what you learned, and how it impacted you at Wydown Middle School and your journey there. As for most of you, it was your first class at Wydown. Connections are powerful. You grow significantly faster and enjoy the process of growth much more when your life is rich in supportive and encouraging connections. That is what makes you who you are, the connections you maintain and grow and experience as you get older. I would now like to take you all on the journey of my life up to this moment and how connections have played an important role on my life and how I got to be right here in front of you on this stage. I grew up on a farm actually. Most people don't know this about me, but I grew up on a farm 40 miles away from here, just outside Wentzville, Missouri, in a small farming community called Flint Hill. So I'm going to use Google Earth to take you there now. So right now you're looking at Clayton High School, and I'm going to take you to the farm where I grew up. Okay, we need to back up just a moment. David, could you hit the arrow to go back? Sorry, this remote's very sensitive. And could you click the next one, please? Okay, here we go, all the way to Flint Hill, Missouri, about 40 miles from here. So right there where it says Oak Hill Farm, that's where I grew up. My father named the farm Oak Hill Farm because of all the oak trees and everything that was on the location. It was about 15 acres. I'm the oldest of 3 kids, and I had an enriching upbringing in the country. We had everything a typical farm had: pigs, chickens, horses, sheep, tractors, and so much more. My parents provided me with a unique perspective on the world and life through my childhood on the farm. Many of my friends growing up lived in subdivisions and neighborhoods. My neighborhood consisted of corn fields, hay, and pigs. My father taught me countless lessons while I grew up on the farm. He demonstrated to me that how connections are made and what makes us all individuals and a community, and most importantly, how we're connected to one another. From a young age, he informed me that we were all stewards of something. A farmer is a steward of the land. You can own the land on paper, but it will not always belong to you. We were responsible for taking care of the land and the resources so that future generations could take it on and continue. So I ask all of you to think to yourselves, what are you a steward of? What will you take care of that will be passed into someone else later in life? My chores on the farm are not the typical chores that you may have had, that you all may have still. Instead of taking out trash and doing the dishes, each day when I got home from school, I would go to the large hog building and clean out over 20 hog pens every day. This job would usually take about 45 minutes to an hour each day. During the summer months, I would spend almost every day in the hay fields putting up hay bales with my father, which we would then deliver to various stables throughout St. Louis County and other areas of the state. And including that, we would put up over 30,000 hay bales. And that was kind of a small year. Sometimes it would be as many as 60 to 70,000 hay bales. We had to produce this many so that we could sell them during the winter months. Besides hay, my father also produced corn, soybeans, and many other crops that were sold to large companies. Looking back on my childhood on the farm, I wouldn't give it up for anything. At the time, it seemed normal, but as I grew up and met other people, I realized that I had a unique and special upbringing that most people don't even understand since they live in very urban environments. That also included my education. I attended a very small private school within that same community where I lived. There were a total of 10 kids in each grade level, and there were 2 grades in each room. So you have first and second grade in one room, third and fourth in another, and so forth. It was a typical small-town Catholic high school. But by the time I reached 4th grade, I was beginning to be bullied by various kids in the school. The bullying took place at school, during recess, and most often on the school bus where teachers weren't present. Since I lived out in the country, I had one of the longest bus rides and was the last one dropped off. I would spend about an hour on the bus in the morning and an hour on the bus in the afternoon. 2 hours a day to be teased and made fun of. Most of the bullying was verbal, but there were occasions where it actually turned physical. And I did my best to hide how I felt and make the best of the situation. Finally, my parents noticed that something was going on, and I wasn't able to hide it anymore. I couldn't keep it a secret. So by the time I was in 6th grade, my parents decided it was time to do something, and the decision was made to go to a new school. We actually made the change over a 3-day weekend in February. It was actually President's Day weekend. And you want to talk about quick, we did that over the weekend. I switched to a public middle school, and that was the moment when my life changed. Not only was I in a huge school with many opportunities, but I was given a fresh start. I was not scared at all because I knew this was just what I needed, and I could not wait to see what it was going to be like. I felt like I had moved to a big city. I was in a school with over 1,000 kids. You see, when I was in private school and I was the victim of bullying, I was not able to make connections to help create my identity. I was basically lost. So when I went to middle school, I instantly was able to make connections with other students and teachers. I began to flourish. This is where I began to fall in love with performing, and it continued throughout my high school career as well. I was very active in the theater and the vocal music programs, so much so that when it came time to apply to colleges, I decided that I wanted to be a theater teacher. I actually started college in the fall of 1995 and was so excited to begin my journey as a theater ed major. In one of my first education classes, I actually kind of had a bad experience, and I decided to drop the education part of my degree and just focus on theater. I did not end up adding a second major, mass communication, with an emphasis on radio and television. But I actually had many discussions with my academic advisor prior to dropping that portion of my degree. And she always told me that she thought I would make a great teacher and wanted me to know, or asked me if I was really sure that that's what I wanted to do. And she told me, you will be back in education someday. I didn't think much of it, and just went on my merry way to complete my theater and mass comm degree in 1999. After graduation, I was hired by the Missoula Children's Theater. I didn't know it at the time, but this job would have the most profound impact on my life and would actually forever change my future. I had never heard of this company before, or even the word Missoula. I got the job by auditioning in a large cattle call style audition at Webster University right down the road here in St. Louis. Each winter, Webster hosts something that's called the Midwest Theater Auditions. It's mainly for summer theater work around the country, but there are some full-time theater jobs you can get from it. You walk on the repertory theater stage and you do one audition for the 60 or more theater companies that are in the audience watching you. And if they're interested in you, they contact you and they'll hire you. I was lucky enough to work previous for a summer before at the Astor's Beachwood Theater Company in Newport, Rhode Island, working in the same auditions. Missoula Children's Theater contacted me and wanted to hire me to be a member of the touring theater program. Tour, I was so excited about that word, that sounded really cool. So Missoula is actually a small city located on the western side of Montana. I kind of equate it with an artsy cowboy town. It's not what you would expect to find in Montana. The job would be a one-year contract to tour the country with an original children's theater production, and along the way I would stop in over 40 towns and communities. I gladly accepted the job. Missoula Children's Theater, or MCT as they like to be called, isn't your normal tour. They don't have large semi-trucks that transfer the show from city to city, or theater technicians that set up the production on each stop, much like you would see at the Fox here in town. Instead, you are paired up with one actor and given a red Ford Ranger pickup with a camper shell, and the whole show is in the back of the truck. That includes set, lights, makeup, and costumes for over 60 actors in every week we perform. The picture that you see now, if it'll come up here, is actually me and my tour partner. Her name was Nikki, and this was taken at one of our tour stops in Iowa. So that is the red Ford Ranger truck. So don't be mistaken by thinking it's a large truck. It was a small truck. And that camper shell had everything, including our luggage. So Missoula works that you go into a town, and the town had previously booked it with Missoula, and we arrive, the two of us. Not only do we direct the show, but we're actually in the show as well. And the first day that we're there, we actually hold auditions. And Missoula, this is kind of their catchphrase. It says, a little red truck pulls into your town with everything it takes to mount a full-scale musical production, except the cast. That's where the children of your community come in. On Monday, they're cast as characters, and by Saturday, they've gained character, the kind that really counts. And so that's what we did. We go into a town. It was all arranged ahead of time, and they were responsible for giving us houses. So sometimes we'd actually stay in people's homes, or they would give us hotel rooms. And we'd be in any kind of community. We were in big towns like Vegas. We performed on stages in Vegas, and then we would be in very rural towns where there was not much else. This is what they look forward to each year in their community. And so we would be, first day we were there, we would audition, and everyone auditions at the same time. That would typically be anywhere in a large city. We audition 500 people in a gym. We circle them all up and audition them all at the same time. And it's a very special process they do that with. And then once the auditions are done, we instantly announce the cast list. which would be about 60 kids. And then we begin rehearsing 4 hours a day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And then we perform it on Saturday, we pack up, and then we drive to the next town. And your typical driving day would be about 600 to 800 miles. So we'd have to get up early on Sunday, and then our itinerary would tell us where we needed to be next. And so that was my life on the road for a course of a year. And I really, really enjoyed it. When my year on the road was up in the summer of 2000, I returned my truck to MCT headquarters and began the check-in process. And while we were unloading our show back in the main building for repairs and the end of tour cleanup, I noticed all the MCT recruits were going through their training and rehearsing before they set out into the theatrical wilderness. I was one of them just 12 short months ago. I remember how nervous and scared and excited and honored I was to be a part of this amazing theater company. Setting out in your little red truck on the highway when you leave Missoula is a little intimidating. They don't call Montana big sky country for nothing. The land is beautiful and you suddenly feel very small when all you can see are mountains and rolling hill after rolling hill in the distance. The tour was an open road and I never knew how much was waiting there in front of me. As I stood there and watched the new recruits training, little did I know I was at a crossroads also, literally. And before I go on too much further, I want to show you this little clip. They actually, a couple of years after I was there, they actually made a documentary of Missoula, and it's called The Little Red Truck. And this kind of gives you a sneak peek of what the company's like. And so none of it, I know people think reality is staged, but this is not. They actually followed a couple tour people around the country for a year. And so this is the documentary they made.
Meet the Tags.
There's still nervous around kids. Judging you. You know, you have to be cool and be able to be stern and teach at the same time. It's always here.
They travel from town to town in little red trucks. Meet the kids.
I had a lot of trouble with Miss Linda.
They've never met each other.
How did they end?
But together, they'll take on the impossible. They'll stage a full-scale professional musical in just 6 days.
To be or not to be, that is the question. Here we go.
You're seeing kids have, in many cases, a first experience with the arts in general.
If for one moment that child feels that somebody believes in them, that's what it's all about.
There are thousands of kids still out there that are waiting to teach me about who I am.
Okay, so as I said, I was actually at a crossroads myself, literally. They offered me another one-year contract to tour for another year, and a lot of people did. Some people that I worked with, I went on their website this weekend as I was preparing and going over my speech, and some of the people I toured with are actually still touring. So that says a lot for the company. They offered me the job, but I told them I needed a day or two to think about it because my plane ticket home was at the end of the week. So I reflected on my year on the road and what it had done for me. It was hard to believe that a year had gone by, and I had driven over 40,000 miles to various locations in the United States with my tour partner. I had auditioned and worked with over 12,000 kids. So many connections were made along the way. I was still getting letters from kids that I worked with at the beginning of my tour, thanking me for the show that they worked on and for letting me know how much the show changed their lives. How could I say no to another tour? I mean, this was the greatest job on earth. Did I really get paid to do this? However, down in my heart, there was something else tugging at me. I began to think about my original major in college and how that is what I always wanted to do. My work with the kids all over the country in teaching and directing them. I knew that I was meant to be a teacher. I declined an additional tour contract and explained that because of MCT and the impact it had on me, I was going to go back home and become a theater teacher, my original dream. I thanked them for all that they had given me and all that they had done for me on the road, but I hopped on that plane for St. Louis and actually applied for grad school the following day after I got back. Now, little did I expect that the same academic advisor that I had several years ago was still there when I walked in the door. And she looked at me and nodded and smiled, and before I could sit down, she winked at me and she said, "Didn't I tell you you'd be back?" Being a teacher is not something you can deny. It's who you are, and I could see that in you several years ago when you first started here. Connections, not only in the present, but in the past, have ways of motivating and inspiring us when we least expect it. My experience with MCT provided me the clarity to see and understand my original connection with being a theater teacher. What I learned on the road would not only benefit me as a teacher, but gave me the inspiration to follow my heart. During my 2.5 years of grad school to become certified as a theater teacher, my father was diagnosed with lung cancer. He was given only 6 months to live, but he proved the doctors wrong, and he lived over 4 years with this disease. He never smoked a day in his life. He never complained about being sick and never gave up working on the farm. He'd go into St. John's in the morning for chemotherapy and radiation treatments, and by that afternoon, he would be back in the fields working on the farm. He was a true inspiration. He defied everything the doctors said. He would not give up. My family grew closer during those 4 years, and our connection as a family became stronger each day. It's easy to take for granted the time you have with each other, but when someone is very ill, you count each day and moment together as a blessing and a treasure. I took inspiration from my father and continued to pursue my dream, even though so much was going on back home. I had this powerful connection with my schoolwork and training, but I also had a connection at home that I didn't want to lose any time with. It was at that point I actually decided to move back home. I was 26 years old when I moved home to be with my family. It was a choice that needed no discussion. That is where I needed to be, home on the farm with my entire family. My younger brother and sister were also still at home since they were much younger than I am. And it was like the good old days on the farm. We were all together, and it made not only my mother happy, but I could tell it brought great peace to my father that we were all together. While I was at home, I actually began my student teaching at Lafayette High School in the Rockwood School District. And while I was student teaching, I would sometimes, to help my dad out, drive one of his pickup trucks full of hay, teach all day, and on the way home from school that day, I would deliver the load of hay for him. We all remained connected during that time and always kept a sense of joy, love, and family with every moment we had together. After student teaching was completed, I heard about a theater teacher opening at Wydown Middle School. I applied, interviewed, and a few days later, my phone rang. I was at home with my mom and dad when I got that important and very special phone call. I was finally going to do what I dreamed of doing, teaching theater. I felt like the luckiest person on earth. My father also got to see my dreams come true. Sadly, in October 2004, my father passed away. I had only been teaching for about 2 months. It, of course, wasn't easy, but I took many lessons from my father and all the connections that he provided me to carry on each day and make him proud. Another connection in my life that was important to me was my friend Stephanie. We actually met in the 6th grade when I moved to middle school. We were both involved in student council and other activities in middle school, and we remained friends throughout high school. We were in theater productions together, we did choir, and then we also ended up doing show choir together. We did start to date during our senior year, and then we ended up going to the same college, actually. As most young relationships do, we grew apart and we went our separate ways in college. We remained friends and stayed in contact from time to time. At some point, we lost touch with each other and didn't communicate for several years. Taking a cue from my father and what he had taught me about connections, I knew that I needed to reconnect with Stephanie and share with her what was going on in my life. 3 months before my father passed away, I contacted Stephanie to see how she was doing. We slowly rebuilt our friendship. Since we had a strong connection in the past, it was easy to speak with her and reconnect and let her know what was going on with me and my family. She was there with me through my father's passing, and over the next year we became closer. I'm happy to say that we're now married, and we'll be celebrating 5 years of marriage this coming summer. She is truly the love of my life. It's always fun to say when people ask me how we met. I get to say, well, we actually met in the 6th grade. And it's always fun to see people's reaction when you say that. You see, we're all connected to each other in some way or another. You've all heard the phrase, "It's a small world." Well, it actually really is true. My first year teaching at Wydown, I had a student who came up to me, it was like in the first couple weeks of school, and said, "Engelmeyer, are you related to the Engelmeyers near Winsville and Flittville?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "My dad used to work for your dad in the hayfields." And so I had that really close connection. They're always around. You will never know when a connection will happen. So what we're going to do, this is going to kind of be fun. We're going to do something right now as a group, and we're going to find a way to make a connection with one another. So I've got this ball of yarn, okay? And so I'm going to hold on to one side. So I'm going to wrap it around my fingers so I can hold on to this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a statement, and if you can connect with that or it applies to you, then raise your hand and I'll toss it to you and we'll connect it around, okay? So I'll start with something. I have a dog. Who else has a dog? Okay, so Eudora, I'm going to toss it to you. Okay, so wrap it around your finger. Who else has a dog? Okay, so Eudora, you pick someone that has a dog. Okay, so I'm going to have you actually toss it really far back. There's some people in the back that have. I picked the arms. I knew it would be soft and safe. So I'm going to have you throw to one more person that has a dog. Okay, so now you have the honor, after you wrap it around your finger and make your connection, make a statement, like I said, I have a dog, say something that we can see who else has that in common in the theater.
I went to Captain
Good throw. All right, so you make a statement. We'll see who you can connect with. You play soccer. Who else plays soccer? Okay, you got some people over here. Okay, Aaron, I'm going to have you do one last one. Say something you think someone has a connection with.
I'm in the musical this year.
So that's that whole, those two rows right there. Okay, so we got some way back there. So you can see, obviously we don't have limited time today, but you can see if we kept doing this, we could get to a point where we're all connected to multiple people, multiple times for various things. So this is just a simple symbol of how powerful connections are. So as I look back on my life so far, I'm here in front of you because of connections that have impacted me in one way or another. I didn't have a direct route to get here. I had a few detours along the way. But allowing yourself to take a detour is the best advice I can give you. We all too often avoid taking a detour or look at it as an inconvenience or that it's something bad or it means something's wrong. Allowing yourself to take a different path than intended will allow you to see things differently, as well as experience things you did not anticipate, all of which only make you a deeper and more connected person. Had I not taken a few detours along the way, I don't know that I would be doing what I was meant to be doing. Remember to always keep your connection somewhere in your heart. You never know when you will need to look back, reflect, and reconnect with one another. So as we get ready for Thanksgiving later this week, many of you will be traveling or staying in town to see family and friends, some that you have not seen in a while. So please take time to enjoy and reconnect with those that are with you, because those connections are what will be with you for the rest of your life. So thank you for letting me be connected to you.